All right, if you just heard the state senator, you've been watching this program this week, we don't have a little problem in Albany. They're finally peeling back here, and you're seeing just how ugly it is below the surface. And it's been going on for a long time, and finally, thanks to U.S. Attorney, let's not kid ourselves, because of the U.S. Attorney, it is that bad. All right, let's bring on our panel right now to talk about just how bad it is and what we do about it. Anthony Figliola, Vice President of Empire Government Strategies, Dominic Carter, political journalist, author, and our senior political correspondent, and Andrew Whitman. And guys, let's try and explain for the public who says, you know what, this happens everywhere, a few of them gets busted, but let's do a little definitions. Explain what member items are, Anthony.
Member items were monies that were allocated to members of the Senate and the Assembly, and they could give it to the Boy Scouts. They'll dole it out to a nonprofit organization to build a building. It was used to carry favor, to get votes, you know, but also to help the community. But unfortunately, that was starting to be used by many state senators and Assembly people to open clinics and like pay themselves.
Child, Pedro Espada, and many others. Now, that supposedly went away, but did it really?
It went away in name, but obviously if you really delve into the budget, which I don't think the average voter is going to do, there are still dollars that are there that members can go after and give. But it's not at the level that it was, where a member actually had X amount of dollars, you know, to give out that they would give to a nonprofit that they ran or their brother ran. So it's not as bad as it was, but it's still around.
Now, Dominic, explain when somebody's sitting on a lot of cash in a campaign fund, even though there's some oversight, how that gets muddy too, and the public is none the wiser.
Well, you nonstop fundraising, and there is some oversight with that money. So you got to be careful if you're doing bad things with it. But for example, I'm taking you guys out to dinner tonight, right?
Fantastic.
Right. It's on my campaign fund. There's nothing. We're going to spend the best. We're going to get the best that money can buy. Do things like that. There are all types of loopholes with the campaign dollars, to answer your question directly. And so it becomes a lifestyle that you can actually live with the BMWs and the Mercedes. For example, State Senator Eric Adams got into a BMW yesterday as the Post tried to question him. These are all things you can do with campaign dollars. It's documented. But, it's the best lifestyle that money can buy.
And then the consequence of that, Andrew, has been always the concern of Albany, which is campaign contribution leads to access. And if it leads to a dependence of a certain sort by a lawmaker, you there get the cycle, and it turns and it turns and it turns. Everybody says that I speak to, it all comes down to the money. When it is, the money is what's corrupting Albany right now. And as a consequence, until you fix how these guys, how the money gets into their pockets and what they do with it, you're never going to solve the problem with Albany. Let's get into some of the solutions we've heard here. Make it a full-time job.
Yeah,
explain what they're talking about.
That's one possibility. Well, right now it's considered a part-time job, so you can have a second job at the same time.
And not too much history, but when they set it up and they put the state capital, you were supposed to be there a couple days a week, right?
Right. So now you can have a part-time job, let's say, as a lawyer, and if you're a lawyer, let's say the way that Joe Bruno was, you're probably going to have some clients who need your legal advice who also have an interest in some of the legislation that you're pushing going forward in Albany. Let's say you're a consultant, or you can consult with housing firms, and those are the housing firms that could have their hands in the till with some of the public funds that are coming through. All the way through, you can just imagine how easy it is to get access to it. Through somebody's second job.
And then that all begs the question, okay, you make them do this as a full-time job, like a member in the House or the Senate in Washington, right? They can't have a second job here. You can't have active portfolios, so you got to pay them more. Do you think the public, given the headlines, would be able to think counterintuitively and say, wait a second, if I want to get a cleaner Albany, I can't pay these guys, I got to pay them real money here. And then as a consequence, I'm going to almost reward bad behavior with a bigger salary. I think you almost kind of have to do that if you really want to clean it up at the base level. Do you think that's politically feasible at all?
Yeah, when people talk about campaign finance reform and they say, well, the public will pay for the campaign, that's not going to happen, especially in the highest tax state in the country. I don't think people want to get more taxes to pay for more corruption. I think you're right. Having it as a full-time job, paying them more money, giving them term limits, this is the pie in the sky stuff. that could work. And you know, how do you do that? Do what they do all the time when Congress gives themselves a raise the day after Election Day. You know, after 2 years, people are going to forget. But at the end of the day, you'll bring in better people if you pay them a real living wage.
I think that's one of the reasons why that's going to be difficult to get, because even if it's 2 years later, people still don't forget. And that way I can run a campaign ad against Anthony voted himself a big raise, and he's in the middle of all this, you know, his people around him are corrupt and stealing left and right, and he voted himself a raise. I think that may be one of the reasons why lawmakers might be reticent to vote themselves into a full-time job or vote themselves
Richie,
to a raise.
but that's not going to solve the problem. I'm sorry to tell you, that's not the answer. There's only one thing that's going to work with these crooks. Not all, some. That's the fear of God by the U.S. Attorney. They used to be afraid of the Albany District Attorney. I forgot his name. He came in, David Soares. He came in, he's the guy that put Alan Hevesy in handcuffs. They were scared to death in Albany.
But not to interrupt you, Dom, but he was quoted today as saying,
he
said, you know, hopefully Governor Cuomo can kind of empower us DAs here, county DAs, so that we can end up doing something about it, which to me was a part of this story that people aren't talking about. My God, we got to rely on a U.S. attorney to get wiretaps. Where was the governor on this? Where are the DAs on this? Why are we outsourcing this to the feds?
Soares' problem is that he had a scandal in his office, a relationship with a female staffer, and that's the real reason why Soares is not necessarily going after. This has been all documented. I'm not speculating.
No, but you're right, Dom.
You know, so Soares is not going to. He's already in office. He didn't run as a Democrat or Republican. He ran with the Working Families Party line. That was a good thing, almost an independent to come in. But now he's entrenched, part of the system. He's not going. The only thing that's going to work, the U.S. attorney. That's it.
Yeah, you're asking the inmates to clean up the prison.
Right.
I don't think that's going to work.
Good way to
you need
put
to
it.
have somebody from the outside come in and clean it up.
But Cuomo made a big deal about this. And I got to say, maybe this is too inside baseball here, but he hasn't delivered. And I know he's now threatening ethics probes and everything else, but to a lot of people, it's talk, talk, talk. Where's the delivery right now?
Well, he may be able to do some things by executive action, like that panel that he's talking about. But in
But he
terms
hasn't
of
spent political capital on this. Let's be honest.
he really
has
hasn't,
not spent political capital.
But that costs him political capital in two ways. One, he's spending the capital on that issue, trying to get it through, and that's also capital that he can't use on the rest of his agenda, because those are the same people who he needs their support on what he wants.
After, I'd say, a rough beginning of the year, even though no one's remotely pointing the finger at the governors, and nor am I even hinting at that, he kind of owns part of this problem. He can't separate himself completely from the legislature, because people say, all of a sudden I got to learn how to say the name Preet Bharara here. Where's the governor?
I don't think it looks good for Governor Cuomo, but I'm not really sure that he's in the hot seat anywhere near to the degree the legislature
you guys buy that? There's a problem at all for the governor or no?
Not at all.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, good enough. We're going to keep coming back to this issue here, because hopefully you've had it. And maybe we should talk about things like recalls in the coming days here. They do in other states here. Maybe it's time for Albany. Maybe that's a shock to the system more than just perp walks here that'll get some attention. All right, when we come back, we're going to switch gears, though. We're going to talk on a national level, what I can be a national shame. No gun reform at all, not even the background checks. But tonight, instead of talking about Washington, I want to talk about kids and guns, a combination that I hope we agree does not mix, and I've got tragedies to prove it. We'll be right back with more on that.